two, one. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Inside Movies Galore, where we are continuing with the Tunbridge trilogy, which is a beautiful independent trilogy from Vermont. And we are going on to discuss the, I believe it
John O'Brien,
2003 film, Nosey Parker, by John O'Brien. And I believe his wife, Margaret O'Brien, was a producer behind it.
And it has the most astonishing looking DVD disc ever made.
Right. Just a plain Jane, but it's got some cool extra features, doesn't it? So, but in any case, so this film is relatively about a couple, a doctor and a photographer who moved to their dream home, Tunbridge, and about the neighbors and the surrounding atmosphere of the countryside are mixed in with this whole scenario. So why don't we get first impressions here? Mo, what was your first impression of Nosey Parker, and was this your first time watching?
This was definitely my first time watching it. Unfortunately, I didn't get to get the best impression of it the first time, because after I got back to my house, I ended up having to watch kids while I was trying to watch Nosey Parker. So mostly my impression of it is it definitely feels like something you need to see to cap off the experience there, and definitely something that I need to revisit in a clearer sense. I was really hoping to pick up more on that from you guys during this, but what I saw of it, I enjoyed, and it seemed like it, was kind of the natural evolution of where I would expect that shit to end up.
Okay. Brandon, what were your first impressions of this film for you?
They're pretty enjoyable. I mean, I've gone over how I discovered it a couple of times now, but as far as the trilogy comes, I was kind of pleasantly surprised as this is an ender. I mean, I was already told that the second one was the obviously the best of the three, but this one did surprise me pleasantly in other areas.
Okay. Going over to Jake, what were your first impressions of this particular third film?
Right. I have to admit, and maybe it's partly that super, super plain DVD case, I don't know. But I have to admit, for whatever reason, my expectations were ratcheted down a little lower than they were for the other two in the trilogy. But in a sense, that made it a little easier for it to impress me. And overall, I did like it a little better than the first film. I mean, Man with a Plan it's hard to beat. I mean, let's be honest. That one was really hard to beat.
Yeah.
And we didn't even, in our discussion on that one, we didn't even mention one of the better lines in the whole film, which apparently was it was so good, I think they used it for the tagline for the film, which is where he said that I spent my whole life in the barn, and I just want to spend some time in the house. That was a good line, This one didn't quite have anything quite that way, but in this sense, and the opening, and I watched the extended opening that they have on the DVD, and it's very similar. It just has more stuff, basically, is pretty much what my takeaway from that. The opening didn't really, for me, it didn't really draw me in. It was interesting, but it didn't really draw me in. And then you have that first scene where the listers go and look at the house. And I don't think I really got the vibe of what the film was going to be until George went back that second day. And when it's really about the friendship between George and Natalie. I mean, really and truly. But the film took a while to get to that point. So I have to say it was a while into the film before I really started to get into the groove of where I was going to go with this film, if that makes sense. Eventually, I did enjoy it quite a bit. I mean, it's really well done. It has great music. It's probably my favorite of the three as far as the music. It's great music. And all the scenery shots of like the autumn foliage and everything was just really, it's really well done. But I do think it had a bit of a pacing issue, taking so long to get where it was going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Myself, like I said, I kind of had a similar getting into this trilogy to Brandon, where I was told about it by Daniel, and I went and I guess in a sense, Brandon and I kind of competitiously went about to try to find our trilogy, but in pure fun, actually. I ended up getting the trilogy. I started to watch it a little bit when I first got it, but I decided to wait until. In fact, I watched it last night in syncopation up until about like 3:30 in the morning. So, my first take on this film, I did like the character of what is her name? Her name is
the main one?
Natalie Newman.
Natalie.
These are the Newmans, who, and the story kind of starts out with Natalie explaining that she took some time to find her dream house, and once they start to show the inside of the place, I was like, holy shit, that place is huge.
Oh yeah, I want that place.
And I want that house. I kind of like the inside of that. I mean, it's got a loft. It's got like a huge ass bathroom. Yeah. It's got like gold finish, and it's quite a quaint looking like rich person's house. So
yeah,
but
think of all the space for DVD shelves in that house.
Well, just alone when she showed her TV, I was like, wait a minute, that should be bigger, shouldn't it?
It should. They're hiding it too.
And then, of course,
we're hiding it.
When she showed the computer, I was like, wait a minute, is that a Mac? One of those old Macs that you put the floppy disks in or something like that, because that's what kind of game that looked like was playing on that computer.
Whenever I see people with smaller TVs than they should have, I always think of like that episode of The Office where they go to Michael and Jan's house, and he's got like that super tiny little flat screen on the wall that he has to stand up to watch.
I don't know. Michael is not a good judge of stuff. I remember the one Office episode I saw where he goes to the liquor store and gets that big case of vodka, and he's like, "Is this enough to get 15 people hammered?"
Yeah. Should be.
But I wasn't sure where this film was going to go because you get the listers coming over to the home, and you start to get that nosy neighbor kind of a vibe.
Yeah.
Where you just think that the people of Tunsbridge are just gonna try to fuck with this couple, like just start doing some random toilet papering or egging up the house or some shit like that. And you get that vibe, but then you get
Even when George takes
film
that bathroom break and just ends up exploring everything while he's on the bathroom break.
Right, and then when he goes into the photography room, those
Yes.
photographs are not the photographs that you see later.
They're not the photographs.
Brandon, you're awfully quiet over there.
They're not the photographs you would see in a diner in Tunbridge, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think about from the nosy neighbor vibe to the friendship that we get to see, Brandon? Where it goes from there? What do you think about that angle?
I think a lot of it just is illustrated throughout the movie when they're going, especially when they move forward to the scene of the kind of impromptu town hall that they have where they're discussing them. And even what he says in the beginning is they don't take very well to outsiders, but after a while they grow to like you. And that's the case. I remember from a movie I watched a long time ago, a documentary called Crumb, which I've seen a number of times, where they were talking about like all these rich people moving into these neighborhoods, wanting to be on these hills and then obstructing the beautiful views. And that's the same thing that these people are doing, is they're kind of moving in, taking over, and kind of destroying part of the view just for their own selfish needs. And that really plays well.
For my part, if I had taken that house, that ugly lawn would have been gone within 5 years. I guarantee you, it would be back to forest within 5 years. That's my doing my part for the neighbors.
If I was rich, my neighbors would definitely hate me because I'm building Castle fucking Grayskull right there or something. I'll probably plant some trees.
A castle, but it would be buried in the woods.
Well, I think one of the things that I've always thought of when I want to like go out and build a home or whatnot, I always want like something like that's set back from the road. I mean, trees aren't necessarily blocking your view, but where you have a sense of like some nature and whatnot. And I mean, you don't necessarily have to have a view from the road.
Screw the view. Screw the view. I want to be able to go out and find cool shit anywhere I look. I don't care about a view.
But the character of George, I like the character of George after a certain point. At first, he seems like he's going to be like that. Gonna like rifle through everything and like talk something on the way. But
I don't know what it is. This is just me. I don't know. It's weird. I really get set on edge by people who violate other people's privacy. I don't know what it is, but that's something that really sets me off. So like movies where people go around rifling through people's shit and just looking in places where they're not supposed to look, that puts me on edge. And so that early sequence where George took his bathroom break, that really bugged me. And I thought this was going to turn into like a dark thriller or something. I didn't know what direction it was going. And I will say, once I saw the bonus features and I saw some of the stuff that ended up on the cutting room floor, I'm like, well, okay, clearly they filmed some stuff that could have gone in that vibe, but I'm kind of glad they didn't. You know? Yeah.
Okay. What did you think about that transition from the nosy neighbor to the friendship that seemed to spawn between George and Miss Newman here?
Well, again, I mean, maybe I didn't get the clearest, perception of it from the circumstances of my viewing of the movie. These movies really aren't designed to be watched while you have like screaming kids around.
Oh yeah.
It's not going to play well to that crowd.
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I enjoyed it well enough. I can see kind of a bit what you guys are thinking, and I think that's like pretty funny to think about if they had taken this in a thriller horror direction.
Yeah.
But they really didn't, and I kind of zeroed in on the how alone Natalie seemed to be, even though it was her idea to move to this home. She suddenly realized that she didn't have many friends in the area yet, and they've been there for 6 months or so. So I guess when she started to take a liking to having and being around George a little bit more, I didn't have a problem with that. I mean, it seemed mostly plutonic, and it wasn't romantic in any sense of the word. It seemed like they were relatively enjoying each other's company, and he was showing her some shit, and she
telling good jokes.
Yeah, so I was getting some relatively good vibes from their relationship.
I mean, even that tagline on at least the poster I used for that thumbnail I made, it says it's like a love story about a friendship,
Exactly, yeah. And it does work really nicely if you look at it in that respect. It really is. And now, of course, that does, and I mentioned this briefly in the Vermont is for Lovers discussion, but I definitely think it applies here too. There were scenes between Natalie and Richard that really felt forced. They really felt kind of shoehorned in, like he was way too aggressively against George. Now, admittedly, they could have done it in a way that would have felt more organic. They could have done it in a way where it would have felt much more realistic because, come on, I mean, really, he had reason to be a little bit skeptical about this whole situation.
Yeah. Well, again,
but the way it was presented in the film, it could have been done more organically. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I felt like it was a little bit more of a it was a quicker jump to aggravation and anger than it was. Than it should have been. But I think if they had handled it, like if they had tacked like 20 more minutes onto this, or maybe 30, to build that a little bit more, I think it would have done well. There were a lot of really good things that were laid here. I really felt like out of the three, this was probably one of the best crafted, but I feel like the director still hadn't quite found his feet entirely.
Correct.
And I do think, again, if you watch the bonus features, you get a little bit of a feel for that because you get to see some of the stuff that did end up on the cutting room floor. And you get a feel that the film could have been much, it could have gone in different directions. It could have felt a little bit more off than it did. They really did make some good calls in the final cut. And you really do get that feel if you watch the bonus features. The first deleted scene that they include, which featured, I can't remember his name offhand, but one of the members of Fish, who basically plays a patient of Richard,
Okay.
who doesn't understand boundaries.
Yes.
It was
Ah.
actually a really great scene, and I would have loved that one in the final film. But
Like,
a couple
what about
of the
Bob?
other, yes, a lot of what about
I would have
Bob?
liked to have
Actually,
seen some of the patients
Yeah.
beyond the one that we saw.
but that one patient though, he was great. He was like the guy guarding the keep. he was the bouncer for them. It was great. It was a great scene. I really enjoyed that scene.
The other thing that I think that is an aspect in this film that
Yeah.
I'm not sure that we've covered on our channel
Mhm.
yet is the product of a relationship between a patient and her doctor that has turned into a relationship
Yeah.
and eventually a marriage. I
Yeah.
think so. Brandon, you are a therapist. For looking at it from a clinical perspective, what do you think about that relationship there?
Well, to me, I look at this whole thing as I look at it as Hollywood's
The
view
Florence
on a
Nightingale
therapist,
aspect?
because
Yeah.
I don't see this guy as a realistic therapist, period. But
Really?
I see him more as a psychiatrist, but not as a therapist. Somebody like a therapist from What About Bob, good example. I mean, these people like have massive amounts of money.
Right.
These people do with their stuff, but I can tell you right now, I know many people who own private practices, and they're not affording like a multi-million-dollar house in Vermont.
Yeah.
It's just not there, and a lot of us work 9 to 5. Now there is an aspect of it where you could say yes, the hours,
Mhm.
which was one of the issues in the film with her wanting a child and him
He
not
was too
being
much of a
there.
workaholic. Yeah.
And I can see that happening in the field, but not in the way that it's
Where'd you go,
presented.
Mo?
Though
But
I did
yeah,
get a kick out
actually,
of that scene where they had him sitting in the chair with the other guy, like just sitting there at the at the desk.
now you have to admit though, if his clientele originally was primarily Connecticut and New York, he might have been able to afford that sort of a place with that sort of a clientele. I mean, that could have been a realistic situation. But I know what you mean, like where we are right now, no, probably not so much.
I mean, yeah, unless he's peddling medications and scripts, he's not making
Right.
that type of money. I'm just
Right,
telling you
right.
right now.
Yeah.
Just as a heads up on that.
Well,
All right. Good to know.
a lot of this film is very straightforward.
Mhm.
I mean, fairly simple. I mean, this couple moves to their dream house, and
Mhm.
they end up with some neighbors that are not sure about them as people, and obviously a friendship blooms from one of these neighbors, and it pinpoints a strong point in the film. But the husband of Miss Newman starts to get jealous of the time that she's spending with
Yeah.
George, which, yeah, it does kind of come all of a sudden, doesn't it? It's like his concern suddenly sprouts. It's like suddenly it's George this, George that, George is here every day.
Right.
So,
But it makes sense. If you're someone who really doesn't work and you spend most of your time at home and you're in an area that's pretty insular overall and most people are mistrusting of outsiders, you're not going to meet people easily. It really is not going to be an easy thing to just go out And yes, she does manage to win people over as she meets them and gets to know them. You know, and you do have that one scene where she meets Fred, and he's like, he's been on the phone. What do you call it? The phone. They have this thing in the film of like all the people talking on the phone and doing the little gossip thing, and Fred's actually one of them. And she actually meets him, and he's like, "Oh, I think he says, you're nothing like I thought you were, something like that."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, and that's I know this because I have lived it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always easy to really get to know people.
No.
And especially if you're in this sort of situation where you are basically an outsider in a fairly insular area. So her husband, being a psychiatrist, you would think he would have had more patience for this phenomenon. You'd think he would have had a little bit more understanding of how hard it would be for her to meet people and get to know people. Yeah. You would like to think that at least.
You'd like to think that there was more empathy involved.
Yeah, definitely.
With especially since he's supposedly this doctor that supposedly deals with the mental health. At least locally or where he is, and I do like the fact that he has the sessions happen in his own home. I do like that aspect because who wants to be in the stuffy like white office and waiting for hours just to see the person who you want to get off your chest with? I mean, I've been to therapy myself, and I remember waiting hours just looking at the same magazines for like ever. So but so I guess the bedside manner just kind of stops at the buck,
Right.
So
actually, I was meaning to look something.
Why I thought it was kind of funny that she mentioned it in joking manner at that dinner that they were at with friends.
Oh, I have seen another movie he was in. I wondered about that.
What?
The husband, Richard, he's actually played by Richard Snee.
Okay.
He was a newscaster in Gone Baby Gone, which was a Ben Affleck film, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
He was in a few things, but that's the one that I see listed here.
He was in a movie that I've actually seen. He was in a movie with Larry Blaymeyer. Although Larry Blaymeyer actually went under a different name there. It was his mobster movie. It's called Meet the Mobsters, but also known as Johnny Slade's Greatest Hits.
Okay.
It was kind of an independent mobster movie, but he was not known. He came up. He's the director behind The Lost Skeleton of Cadabra and The Lost Skeleton Returns, and just recently came out with A Dark and Stormy Night on Blu-ray. He
does look familiar.
He's been going through his Blu-ray or going through his films and putting them to Blu-ray, and his Kickstarter are actually like making the money for these things. So. Which is kind of cool that he's going back through his catalog and putting that to a different format.
I do find it interesting that IMDb lists this movie, Nosey Parker, as a documentary, and they list Vermont is for Lovers as a comedy. And in my mind, Vermont is for Lovers is more of a documentary, and this is more of an actual film, actual scripted film. And actually, in the I do remember the credits. I remember thinking this in my mind in the credits. It says something like story by John O'Brien, script by cast improvisation.
Okay.
I like that way of describing it. But really, it does not feel like a documentary. Really, Vermont is for Lovers felt much more like a documentary. So I think IMDb actually has it backwards.
Yeah.
It's interesting how they do that. But yeah.
Yeah, I would say that it's more of a documentary kind of more mockumentary than
It does have a documentary feel to it, a documentary vibe. And there is, all three of these films do have elements of locals basically playing themselves and providing documentary information about the area. So they all have that element.
I would say,
yeah.
I would say this is the least of the documentary type.
Really?
I felt like it. I mean, the first one I felt was the most documentary-like because it was only interviews. The second one had a story, but it really played to real life. So in a way, it felt more like a documentary.
And then, of course, life ended
one,
up imitating art.
The third one had a full-on story and ended up being and though it was pretty good, it still was a movie. It felt like the most solid.
I still feel like Man Without a Plan has a Woody Allen kind of a vibe to me.
It does a little bit.
Just because of the narration through at least half of the film.
I do feel like Woody Allen's documentaries, Take the Money and Run and Zelig, and especially Sweet and Low Down, but his mockumentaries did have a little bit more of a scripted movie vibe to them than most. Like, again, I think more Christopher Guest. I think more like Waiting for Guffman, Best in Show, A Mighty Wind. That's more kind of where I'm feeling with these films.
Okay, I've never seen any of those.
You're missing out, dude. You're missing out. But basically the whole mockumentary idea definitely does. This one you could call a mockumentary. Yeah. I feel like they have a little bit more. They have less, if you will, bite to them. A Mighty Wind is a good example. A Mighty Wind did not really have a great deal of bite to it. It was basically sort of a lightly scripted documentary, but not really a documentary because these are characters playing parts. But it wasn't really a satire in the way that Best in Show or Waiting for Guffman or This is Spinal Tap or Zelig or even Take the Money and Run. They all had more of a satirical vibe to them, more of a bite to them. These are more like, again, that sort of slice of life, kind of a healing type kind of thing, where there is that mockumentary feel, but it's not, you know what I mean? Like, it's not really mocking it. It's more of it's a documentary, but it's kind of scripted, sort of that sort of thing. And so I don't know. It's a really fun little subgenre. The subgenre, but
I'll have to check out some of those when I get a chance.
Well, one of these days, I'm actually thinking about this very seriously. We've got our next month's theme set up, but I'm very seriously thinking about maybe for August, maybe talking about like Dog Days or something and putting Best in Show forward as a possibility. Because Best in Show has to be seen. It is one of the best comedies ever made. But anyway, so that's that. But anyway,
the other thing is, have we taken a look at the comedy aspect of all three of these films?
The comedy aspect.
Oh yes, because there is some humor that goes along with
Brad is hilarious.
Yes.
But actually, George is pretty funny too. He is the man with the jokes, and some of the jokes are pretty good. Some of them are pretty dry. I mean, he'd make a British comedian proud. Some of them are really dry jokes. Yeah, he's it's interesting. It's the comedic aspect. They do go into this. They give George a lot of opportunity to tell those kind of. Sometimes they're pretty ribald jokes. Sometimes they're kind of straightforward too. But
Although I do kind of feel sorry for George when Natalie does meet someone else within town, and yeah, she wants to go out for a ladies' night, but they kind of like wrangle him into babysitting for whoever's kid.
Well, that wasn't someone in town. That was her old friend. Like she complained a lot about not meeting anyone, so Richard kind of invited some old friends of theirs from. Was it Connecticut, New York? I kind of lost track a little bit.
Might have been from New York.
But yeah, there was like this girl was like her friend and had kids, and that's what she wanted. And the guy was sort of a friend of George's, and they were golf buddies, even though they both sucked horribly at golf. They were not Richard. Sorry.
Although he did get kind of excited about a golf game that he had in that bathroom scene. So.
Right. I was like, they had that interesting dinner scene where it was like after that argument about George, and that's what I'm saying. That whole argument about George, I don't know. It kind of felt a little bit out of place. It wasn't organic to the film. The post-argument dinner scene felt a little more organic, but there they were ribbing on the guy, his horrible golf game, and then Richard made the point of something like, "Well, just because I'm paying the bill, you can't put all the dumping on me."
Well, they were starting to have a sexy moment there, and all of a sudden, George's name, and that's when it's like that's when it started to go south. So
well, it's going south a little bit because Richard just wasn't listening to Natalie.
Nope.
He wasn't listening. He's supposedly a psychiatrist. That's his job to listen, and he wasn't listening.
Yeah, which is why we had that dinner scene. She made that jibe at him, saying, "Well, I guess you got to listen."
Yeah, you would listen to me if I paid you. Yeah. That was a good line, actually.
And he was kind of like ha 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 at it, but it was true. So.
Yeah, there was some truth to that.
What do you think about that dinner scene, Brandon?
Oh, I thought it was interesting. It's kind of uncomfortable at parts of it. But I would expect it to be.
there was a lot of this, and especially I think that scene and that comment, actually. There were times where Richard really reminded me of Fraser Crane, and not always in a good way. Because you could see that being the sort of deal of like when he finally gets married, it would be that sort of situation where he probably would not listen. And that's like, I mean, I love that. I love Frasier. I love that show, but that character annoyed the crap out of me much of the time. But
yeah, you would think that maybe if they were husband and wife, he wouldn't mind her being in the same room when he's having conversations with like patients or whatnot, or unless he likes to keep his doctor-patient confidentiality.
Are you talking about when he kicked him out of the room and said this is business?
Yeah.
Yeah, that part was interesting.
But in any case, what did we think about the dream sequence of her?
With the baby?
Yeah,
Yeah.
how it was instigated. I thought that baby was cute. I mean, it's
Yeah,
also,
he was.
you know, uh, I don't know. No, I just thought the movie was cute. Cute. And what did we think about the film as a whole?
I liked it a lot as far as a whole goes. To me, the film shines the most in the visuals and the music,
The music
which
was awesome.
I feel was actually the best of the trilogy. I mean, seeing all the fall foliage, I mean, they made a point of making sure that
Yeah.
it was always fall when they were filming this.
Yeah.
And coming from an area where the fall foliage is very important to our area. Matter of fact, where I come from originally, people will take sojourns to the area to see the fall foliage. Which,
And
I mean,
people
for
don't
those
even
who and for those who don't know what fall foliage means, it's when the leaves change during the winter and they
exactly.
see all the colors throughout the mountains.
Oh yeah,
So I'm sure that's a big deal in your area too, Dave. But like I've not spent as much time as I would like. But I've not spent as much time as you guys have probably in the cooler zones that really get the fall foliage. But even in central Virginia, we typically get good fall color. But none of this compares to what Vermont and most of New England is famous for. What they call the leaf peepers in the movie, I believe they call them the
Mhm.
leaf peepers. Uh, so I fully get it because I work in a nursery, and one of my selling points to people is fall color.
oh yeah.
So yeah, so I definitely, I get it. I fully get it, and it does make for some gorgeous scenery, no doubt about it. Definitely does.
There, there are
Um,
some very um, cool parts of streets here in Milwaukee that I like to see the fall colors, where there are trees on either side, or especially along Lake Drive, towards Lake Michigan area, where that goes along the lake side. If you start in South Milwaukee and work your way north, it kind of goes all the way along the lake and into Whitefish Bay a little bit, and the houses get like more richer as they go along, and it's just real beautiful during the fall seasons. The trees, the leaves, the colors that they are.
right.
But yeah, I get it too. So
And this is one of the reasons why I fully understand their neighbors being
protect
pissed.
protective of their.
Pissed at their, well, the way I understood it, maybe I was wrong. The way I understood it, this house was already built.
Yeah,
Basically the property was already essentially as it is when they moved in, and they
they remade
apparently
it. Yeah,
revamped the interior mostly.
Mhm.
yeah, they
So
did.
that whole lawn and whatnot probably can't be fully blamed on them,
No.
It's
but
more that
the
they're
neighbors sure did.
outsiders.
The neighbors sure did. But
Mhm.
I have to admit, again, it would take no more than 5 years for me to be just completely destroy that lawn. But to me, that just completely flies in the face of everything you would move to Vermont for. Why in the bleeding hell would you want a lawn that's green all year long if you're moving to a place that's famous for the seasonal color? It makes no sense. Move to freaking Florida if you want your yard to be green all year long. It makes no sense. Yeah.
Right.
So that's yeah.
So let's talk about favorite scenes here. What are some of your favorite scenes from this particular film, Jake?
Me? I'm not sure that anything really leaps out into the front and center. And it's a lot of little moments. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there are a lot of good little moments in this one. It's really hard to say that there's like a definite favorite. I might think of something while you guys are mentioning yours, but I can't really think of a specific one.
Brandon, if there was a favorite scene that you could take from this film, what would it be?
It is a hard one to look at. Maybe anything that involves the actual foliage and the views that they're having, like that scene when he's coming up to her while she's sitting on that bench that's just overlooking the beautiful view. That's just, it has some insight into the plot, but also the views itself and the music just really stands out to me.
Right.
Okay. And I guess one of my favorite scenes when he's actually showing her the tractor and how to drive the tractor. She evidently has a very slow start at starting it, and she's inching forwards as it goes along. So, but the fact that she can have laughable moments with this older man and be comfortable around him. Any of those scenes are my favorite scenes. It's the blossoming of the relationship between the two, and that's why I felt like when she was just slamming him with the babysitter thing, I was like, "Well, you're kidding me. You got your best friend back now you're just slamming him with the kids." Right.
And he did have some good scenes with the kids too. Although they really were little brats, but he did a good job of hanging in there.
Third wheel in the friendship, so
it was kind of cute when the one put him to bed and the other one climbed up on top of the couch and went to bed. That was kind of fun.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, so there were some good moments there, but and one thing I will mention, this is not necessarily like it was more of a poignant thing than anything. But I don't know, Brandon, you probably did because I think you watched the bonus features. I don't know, Dave, if you came across this, but apparently George Lyford actually died during the production of the film. And
he died in 1999. I guess.
Right. He actually died during the production of the film, so the ending ended up a little more truncated than it might have been otherwise. Then they ended with that whole video montage with that really nice song playing for him, and that was kind of a nice, poignant send off, if you will.
I do think so too.
Yeah.
Many of the older individuals in these films are no longer with us, and that is a sad thing. But also, it shows the importance of these films because a lot of their wisdom has remained with us thanks to these films.
Right.
I mean, without them, would we have heard the stories? Would we have heard the bad jokes? Would we have had the awkward yet amazing run for Congress?
It goes to saying, what do we think about the overall trilogy? I did leave a moment here for that. What do
It is a shame we've lost Mo and Dan, but whatever. That happens. It is kind of great. But, overall, it's a nice trilogy. It really is a nice. It's a slice of a corner of the country that really does, I think, do justice to that little corner. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I have to agree. I liked watching the. I mean, normally I'm like watching a lot of horror films, so taking this moment to actually just watch something with nature, and even my fiance Tammy, she was saying, "This is like really nice that we're watching watching these films. We got the nice cool air blowing in, and and during the first film, we had actually taken some personal watermelons and I sliced them in half, and we were spooning them. So I actually got the country, got to eat it like a country man.
Nice.
So, that reminds me, personal watermelons are 2 for $3 at Pick and Save. So
There you go.
Nice.
but in any case, I relatively enjoy. I mean, I will definitely rewatch. I'm definitely going to watch the commentary on the
I mean,
they're worth it.
eventually,
All three of the
no doubt.
commentaries are well worth it. The first commentary, just as if we're talking about the trilogy as a whole, which I do think we should, the first commentary is more of a just talking to one of the older individuals from the first film and just talking about history and really talking about himself. It's more of an interview that lasts for the whole of the film. But there are some things that he points out in the film that are just kind of cool to see. The second one is closer to relate to the film, and same with the third. The third has much more of a relation to the film itself, but they're very informative and very entertaining. I think all three of them are well worth checking out.
Cool.
All righty. Well, I think on that note we should end the discussion. So why don't we start with our outros?
Okay.
Why don't you, Brandon, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
All right. Well, my name is Septum Sen. I'm with Septum Sen versus the World. We cover physical media and all of its shapes, sizes, and forms. I do various things like release videos, pick up videos, which tomorrow's will be a little bit later than normal because I wasn't able to edit it in time since I'll be at the office tomorrow, but it will be up. Of course, we also do some special content in the form of our vlogcast, which is kind of our COVID talks. And of course, on the 29th, we plan to debut an anime discussion group, which will be once a month at the end of each month, where we talk about various anime series, where we're hoping to talk about Paranoia Agent. I know I need to start watching it next week. As a matter of fact, that's a big goal of mine to get through. It's going to be fun, to be sure. Of course, I also help with Inside Movies Galore and checking out and talking about what's up next in our lineup. Of course, we have ended our Meet the Cast month this time around, but we do have 2 birthdays coming up at the end of June, which would be our very own Dave up here, and of course myself. And I'll let Dave talk about the 2 when he gets to his for his next 2, because next week we'll be celebrating his birthday. And then in July, we have decided on Superhero Summer, and you all need to be looking out for special polls that should be appearing in the next week or so related to the selection of our movies for July.
Definitely. And before I head over to Jake and ask him who he is, I just wanted to go on and say that in the last 2 discussions on the first 2 films in this trilogy, we had Daniel O'Day from Rebel Gaming
Club.
Oh yes,
joining us for those first 2 discussions. So I wanted to give a shout out to Daniel for coming on for those two and enjoying a few discussions with us. And we also had Mo on with us for some of those discussions, and he runs Drunken Master Studios, so definitely check out his stuff. He's got some phenomenal videos out there for you to check out. And I hope he continues to do what he does. So give a shout out to you, Mo. Some love for you. In any case, moving on to Jake, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
All right, I'm Jake. I'm a movie collector, fan, what have you, here in Central Virginia. Currently distracted by two very hyperactive cats. They're having a good time, but and of course I am often, or I'm generally the co-host on Simpson versus the World, and has spent a lot of time on Inside Movies Galore and Delusions of Grandeur, having fun talking about these kind of movies. That we are definitely covering some pretty random bases the last month or so, and for the most part, been pretty cool. And I've been it's been interesting seeing where we go from here to there and everywhere.
Right.
And definitely very, very happy to have this added to the collection and have watched it.
When did you add yours to the collection, by the way? I know that
A couple weeks back, I guess.
Okay.
So yeah, it's very cool, and I would never have heard of this trilogy if Dan hadn't brought it up. So definitely shout out to him for doing that. Definitely, and you know, I do have my own nature themed channel, Code Wiki Jake, on YouTube. It will be updated. I don't know when, but it will be.
It will be.
And my name is David Strege. I am one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for listening to us and coming along with us on our journey. I started this about 4 years ago. 4 years ago now?
Sounds right.
It's been a while.
It's been a while, but Brandon, I thank you for continuing this journey, and Jake, I've enjoyed having you on. You have a different perspective from time to time, and I've gotten to know you through having you on this discussion. So I just wanted to give a shout out to you too, because I wouldn't have known you if not for Brandon bringing you on the show. So thank you for your presence. In any case, I also moonlight on a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where I put out some video pickups of my own and some video reviews. Got a few of them out there currently. May not get them out as much as I want to, but I'm definitely planning on some more reviews. Just hard to get my thoughts out on things during this pandemic here, I guess. So, in any case, thank you for listening. Have a great day, evening, or morning, wherever you are. And next week, we are going to be discussing some of my birthday picks, where we're going to be starting out with, I believe, Darren Aronofsky's Noah. And then going into one of my favorite caveman films called Encino Man. So definitely keep a lookout for those. Hopefully, my crew here will enjoy them, seeing them with me, and we'll see what our thoughts are on some of these adventurous films. So, in any case, thank you for listening to our ramblings. And thank you oh so much. Like, share, and subscribe. And definitely have an appreciation for these films after watching them. So and definitely check all three of these films out for sure. They're a slice of life inside the Tundra Bridge community, and I think they should be seen by everyone. So,
oh yes. Hopefully
But,
there'll be more. Like the first one's on YouTube, but the others are not, which is sad. And they should be wider released.
Right.
oh,
Indeed.
well, Fred Tuttlin is in Pixar's movie Up. So, in any case,
you mentioned that, and I had not made that connection before, but I think you're right. It's pretty close.
good night, ladies and gentlemen.
Bye.
Right.